Drinking flowers. Hey guys! Welcome back to the fifth and final video. It's the big one of my story of how I found my life purpose. If I could summarize the past 4 videos in one sentence, it would be this. Far too often we look at other people and make their approval the standard we feel compelled to meet, and as a result, squander our very potential and purpose. That was exactly how I lived the first 22 years of my life. The first 4 videos, as you can tell, I was very reactive. I just kind of dealt with things as they came on. I felt lost, I felt lonely, I felt empty inside, so I would go out and I would distract myself and I would seek external validation and seek external remedies for my very internal problems. All that being said, I believe everything happened for a reason. Had I not been depressed, had I not had anxiety, had I not had an eating disorder, had I not lost my brother, had I not been that lost and been that unhappy, I wouldn't be where I am today. Had I not experienced all of that, I wouldn't know what that was like and I wouldn't have questioned anything. So this brings us to this week's video. How did I find my life purpose? As much as I wish I can just give a 1-sentence answer, we all know that's impossible. And so a series of events had to have happened for me to get to where I am today. And I guess we'll start from where we left off last week. The ending of last week's video is when I graduated from college and decided to take 6 months off to really figure out what I wanted to do with my life. This singular moment, me looking back now, was such a major inflection point where I was faced with red pill or blue pill. Face the truth of reality, or continue going down the rabbit hole of ignorance of illusion and continue living in the dream world. Because I've been living in the dream world for the past 22 years of my life, because I've been constantly refusing my call to action, just literally eating blue pills every couple of months to make myself feel good and to let my serotonin and dopamine levels explode in my head. That was me putting my foot down. That was me throwing up peace signs because I don't throw middle fingers anymore and being like, alright, I've lived my life for this long, doing what I think I should be doing what others have been telling me to do, but is this really what I want to do? And the answer was no.
Give me the red pill.
That was essentially me ejecting myself out of the system, out of the dream world, out of the dream world that I've been living in for way too long now. So this is me finally embracing and finally committing to the quest. After slapping away and burying my call to adventure for many years, this is where the real journey begins. These months were filled with so much soul searching, so much doubt, and so much questioning myself, and so much being really hard with myself. During all of this time, I knew I couldn't do this alone, so I started looking for help. And help came in the form of books. First, these 3 books. Alchemist, Power of Now, Think and Grow Rich. These 3 books taught me our minds are powerful beyond our imagination, and there's a very fine line between making or breaking our lives, depending on if we know how to control it. It can either be highly awesome and wondrous and super helpful in helping you achieve all that you want to achieve, or it can be super destructive and cripple you because ego and self-doubt and self-consciousness and all of that. Having learned this at the beginning of summer, it really helped set the tone for the months to come. And because during this time, I was really just trying to be the fattest SpongeBob in the world and absorb as much information, as much knowledge as I can. So because I was a lot more open and willing to accept new things and to learn about new things, I reread a book that I've read 50 to 100 times when I was younger. So it is this book. It is John Falun, and it is written by the founder of Falun Dafa. This book pulls from Buddhist, Taoist, scientific, as well as modern principles to explain what Falun Dafa is. I found a quote recently that does a really good job at explaining what Falun Dafa is, so I'll throw it up. Again, this is a part of me seeking help. It's a part of me looking for help. It's a part of me admitting to myself that I don't know all the answers and that I need to look through fiction, through self-help, through spiritual, through books to figure out what it is that I'm looking for. This summer, my grandpa got really sick, so my mom and I flew back to Taiwan to take care of him. There's just something about hanging out with older people. It gives you so much perspective that when you're 90 and losing your mind, you're not gonna worry about things you worried about when you're younger. That was a really good reminder for me to remember what's important to me and what I value, and that it's so important to focus my time, my energy, and my efforts on things that really matter, that things that I value, not things that other people value or what society says that I should value. And so I asked myself, if I were as old as my grandpa and my mind was still kind of there, what are the things that I would be okay with worrying about? And at that time, it was family, my mental health, my physical health, relationship with my friends, and my career. So of all the things that I care about, top 4, at that time, I was passing with flying colors. I was doing really well on the 4 things. The only thing that was kind of lagging behind was my career, but that was okay because that's exactly why I took 6 months off, to really try to figure out what it is that I want to do. Coming back to LA, same thing, more or less. A lot of trying to figure out what I want to do, a lot of doubting myself, a lot of comparing myself to my peers, a lot of questioning myself of did I do the right thing? Did I make the right decision? And one day, my mom sat me down and she was like, Rowena, for as much as you want to help other people, or as much as you've always wanted to help other people, aren't you being really selfish with the way you're thinking about this whole career path? And I just sat there and blinked at her because my mind was blown. She was so right. For the majority of summer up until that point, the way that I was thinking about a career or what I want to do, it was a lot of entitlement. It was a lot of what does the world owe me? It was a lot of how much money do I make? What kind of status do I want? What kind of title do I have? And that I realized, yeah, it goes against everything that I was looking for, which was I wanted to help people. In that moment, I was like, all right, let me flip the way that I'm thinking. Instead of thinking about what does the world owe me, let me think about it from a perspective of what can I do for the world? So with the skills, with the education, with the network, and with the family, and with the friends that I was so fortunate enough to have and to be exposed to, how can I use all of these things to make the world a better place? When my mentality changed, things just kind of started happening like clockwork. My mom came home from a conference sometime in October and she was like, hey, Rowena, there's a job opening in New York City at Epoch Times, which is a media company. You should look into it. I did. I looked into it and I was like, I don't know what it is about, what's going on. I don't know why I'm feeling this magnetic gravitational pull. I don't know why my intuition is just screaming at me, telling me, you must go to New York. Awesome things will happen when you go to New York. And so that's what happened. Although never in a million years would I thought I work at a media company, I did know at that time that Epoch Times was a company that I could stand behind because they believed in something greater. The company was founded by a Chinese Tiananmen Square dissident. He was shocked to discover when he came to the States that all of the Chinese newspapers were still regurgitating propaganda from China. And there's laws against this, especially after World War II, where you can't have foreign propaganda on US soil, but I guess because Americans can't read Chinese, they don't know. And so he wanted to bring truthful and censored news to the Chinese people because, as you guys all know, things are still crazy over there and everything is super censored and super big brother-y. Over the years, Chinese website grew into Chinese newspaper, grew into global media. Of the general interest news topics that the media covers, they do have a specific focus on China news as well as human rights issues in China. Of the human rights issues is the persecution of Falun Dafa. I briefly mentioned Falun Dafa earlier. To me, the practice is really just teaching you how to be a good person. And so when the practice first started, it caught on like wildfire, purely through word of mouth. But when the students grew from 100 to over 100 million, the Chinese government got scared. They're like, whoa, there's more people practicing this belief than there are members of the Chinese Communist Party. Overnight, flick of a light switch, they resorted to starting a nationwide crackdown of anyone who practices Falun Dafa, anyone who says it's a good thing, are public enemy number 1. These innocent people who just want to be good people and who want to make themselves healthier mentally and physically, they're being sent to pretty much modern day concentration camps. They're being raped, tortured, killed, executed alive for their organs because there's a super lucrative black market for organs in China. So at this time, although I didn't start practicing Falun Dafa myself, I knew enough about it and I met enough people who have been affected or whose families have been affected for me to know that this is a real issue and that this is something that's really wrong. For a group of people to be wrongfully persecuted for believing in something greater and believing in something good and believing in wanting to make themselves better, that alone was a good enough reason for me to be like, all right, I'm gonna give this a try. Because hey, if it turns out to be completely absurd or it turns out to be not what I expected, I can always come back. So that's what took me to New York. Work in and of itself was super exciting. I tried a bunch of different things, wrote editorial content, ran their social media account for the dining section, which was super fun. I got to go to all of these events, met all of these chefs, ate all of this bomb food. I still daydream about writing assignments where I get to try food. I did sales, I did marketing, I did advertising. I got such a great experience and such a great overall peer inside how a media company works. So that is the work part. The spiritual part. So right when I moved to New York, I did become a lot more curious about Falun Dafa and what it really entailed, because growing up, my mom would tell me things, I would hear things, and they're all good things, but I never was curious about the belief. Something started making me a lot more curious. I started reading a lot more. I started being a lot more open to conversations and to be a lot more open to thinking about these things. And so one day I was reading a transcribed lecture from sometime in like 2002, and it just answered every single one of my life existential questions of, what is my life purpose? Why do humans exist on Earth? And what are we here for? Where do we go after? I've kind of always had a relatively good understanding of these things, but because it was so like concisely written, I just knew in that moment, this is it. Like, whatever it is that I'm looking for, whatever it is that I have been looking for, this is it. And that was kind of a very anticlimactic way of how I really reconnected with my spiritual belief and what I really, from the bottom of my heart, decided, all right, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to be a cultivator of Falun Dafa. And so the more I learned about the practice, the more I started fully applying all of the principles to my life. When I started taking my beliefs seriously, I also started taking my problems seriously. I started to really look inward and really put myself under a microscope and to try to make peace with my past, try to make peace with a lot of things that have happened in my life. I forgave myself for all of my past mistakes, for all of my past missteps. I started letting go of a lot of things. Attachment to people, attachment to things. I also started letting go of all of my vices, drinking, drugs, sex, materialistic things. I realized now looking back, the only reason why I was so attached to these things and so addicted to these things, it was because I was trying to fill a void inside my soul. I was longing for a deeper sense of connection, and I would look for it through going out, through drinking with friends, through going to raves, and through doing drugs, because to me that bonded us and made us closer. But in reality, he kind of did, but it also kind of doesn't. And same thing with sex. I was having sex for all the wrong reasons because I wanted to be closer to the person that I was with, and it didn't work out that way, because at the end of the day, that's not sustainable. And so all of these vices, I realized, was me looking externally to fix a very internal problem. And once I started looking internally as opposed to chasing things externally, I really learned how to make peace with my past, and I really learned how to forgive myself. If I could sum up New York in a few words, it would be, going to New York was like going in the woods for me. You know how artists would go in the woods to find themselves and solve this big problem that they have or work on this like giant project? For me, going to New York was like me going to my woods. It was where I went and really found myself and really made peace with myself and made peace with everything in my life. And it was where I really truly grew to become the person I knew I was always capable of becoming. So that was awesome. Whenever I think of New York, it makes me really happy. It makes me really happy. Okay, but back to my story. If I could stay in New York for the next decade or two, I totally would. But because I moved to New York for work and work needed me back in LA, I moved back to LA. New York was all sorts of awesome. I grew to become this very self-aware and conscientious person. But at the same time, it was when I moved back to LA where I realized, oh wow, I went from one side of the extreme to the other side of the extreme. Party wild child Rowena moved to New York in search of higher meaning and purpose and fulfillment, and I turned into this very square grandma who I think honestly when I was in New York I went out to bars or clubs maybe like less than 5 times within a year. And because I played so much for 23 years of my life when I was in New York, I would feel guilty if I were to ever go out, if I were to ever do anything outside of work and my spiritual belief. That's all I did when I was in New York, work and spiritual stuff, which I also needed for me to realize, okay, I can do this and I also can do that. So now how do I meet in the middle of being like a normal person who values all of these things but isn't living on either extremes? Because it is a Buddhist principle of walking the middle path to not be on either extremes, because if you're on either extremes it means you're attached to something. So moving back to LA, that was a really big wake-up call. It's actually something that I'm still actively trying to work on right now. And this takes us to the beginning of June of this year, where I published my first video of where I found inspiration to start my YouTube channel. So we've gone full circle, and this brings us up to now. First and foremost, choosing the red pill, choosing to be ejected out of dream world, choosing to pursue the truth of reality, actively choosing to embark on this quest of self-discovery. It was a lot of asking myself the hard questions of what do I value and what's important to me. It was a lot of being comfortable with the uncomfortable, being okay with not being okay. And that, if you know me, goes against everything I believe in because I'm such a planner and everything needs to be planned down to the T. It was a lot of being brutally honest with myself while also remaining unwavering faith in myself and in some higher power that things will work out in the end, and also finding something greater to believe in. And you know what they say about it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. I really truly believe that now, especially looking back and having connected all of my dots and knowing that a bunch of dots are still going to connect in the future. Just because I found my life purpose doesn't mean the journey stops there. It's a continual journey of, all right, now that I have a North Star, now that I have this guiding light, how do I stay as true north and as true to my path as I possibly can, while also doing all the things that I think I should be doing? So I'm going to leave you guys with a passage from Ego is the Enemy. It's by Ryan Holiday. According to Seneca, the Greek word euthymia is one we should think of often. It is the sense of our own path and how to stay on it without getting distracted by all the others that intersect it. In other words, it's not about beating the other guy. It's not about having more than the others. It's about being what you are and being as good as possible at it without succumbing to all the things that draw you away from it. It's about going where you set out to go, about accomplishing the most that you're capable of and what you choose. That's it. No more, no less. By the way, euthymia means tranquility in English. And with that, I hope me sharing my story and me sharing my journey has been beneficial in some way, shape, or form. Either it's bringing some sort of awareness that this kind of a life and this kind of an existence is possible, or to serve as some sort of an encouragement to push away the blue pill and to seek the red pill when you are ready. Thank you guys so much for spending your time with me. I honestly hope this was helpful. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, if you disagree with anything I said, if you agree with anything I said, comment below, send me a message on Facebook, DM me on Instagram, anything. Happy to talk. And I just want to say thank you. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next week.